Welcome to AT&T's teleconference service. Please enter your access code, followed by the pound sign. To join the conference as the host, press star. Please enter your host password, followed. At the tone, please speak your name.
WRCOG?
There are 1 participants on the call, including you. You are joining your conference as the host. For a menu of available commands, press star pound.
So do you have questions, or you just need a staff report?
Yeah, I do have questions.
Okay.
And the staff.
Okay. Okay. We're ready? Ready? Well, good afternoon, everyone. Glad everybody's here. With the recent upgrades to the voting system, I want to remind everyone that in order to view the PowerPoint presentations at any time during our meeting, you want to press the movie camera button, and if you are voting, you're going to press the gavel. And if that's clear as mud, we're good. So everybody knows that that's what we're going to do for voting. And that's how we'll also do our roll call, I think. And we want to welcome today Nancy Carroll from the city of Beaumont. She is now the primary person. She's over here. And I'll ask everyone to please vote to say that you're here. Oh, no. You're going to do the gavel. Okay. He's retired, so. Yeah. The gavel took you somewhere else?
Yeah.
Okay, remember it's the gavel that's on the thing next to your mic, where it says the microphone on the desk, is where you want to vote. On the flat desk part is where you see the gavel. That's where you're voting.
He just walked in.
Mr. Supervisor Chair, are you here?
I'm here.
But if you want to vote no, how do you vote no?
I didn't vote. I voted yes.
No, if you wanted to vote no.
Well, this is roll call.
Yeah.
I can see that.
So-
I can hear it.
Okay. But if, I'll ask you when we get.
City of Paris, are you able to hit the vote button? What was the Paris?
That's not what I was told. Okay.
Canyon Lake?
Okay, so we have to hit the button on the screen too, if you're here.
Madam Chairman, how many people does it take to get a button to push?
As many as we have here.
Do you see the vote tally on your screen?
Okay. Okay, yes. Okay, so everybody is here, has voted. And with that, I want to wish a happy birthday to John Denver today. This is his birthday, and we'll ask him to lead us in the pledge. Okay. And we're going to ask you to lead us in the pledge today.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, since the person we wanted to present the special recognition to is not here, we'll go to public comment. And so far we have one speaker, Dustin. Oh, I'm sorry, he's going to speak on an item on the agenda. So we're going to go to the minutes. Do we have any objections on the minutes? Or any corrections? Seeing none, please vote. Motion passed 18-0, 2 abstentions. Next, we have a summary of minutes. I'm sorry. The consent calendar, we are deferring item A, and we are pulling item D. Are there any other items to be pulled? Seeing none, do we have items B, C, E, F, G, H, I, J? Well, the ones that we're going to vote on now, please vote.
You're pulling item A and D as in Delta?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passed 20-0. And we'll go to item D. We have questions from City of Lake Elsinore.
Yes, thank you. Can I have staff come up, please, for item D? And I don't know if you can bring up our acquisition process schedule. It's on page 60 of the report. No, you can't do that. Okay. Well, the reason that I pulled this item is when we started the streetlight program, Lake Elsinore was the first one to participate in this. That was 1/24/2017. But others have beat us to the CPUC. So that was a question that came up in our city. So maybe you can answer the why, how we can be that. You know, we were at least a month before Temecula, and several months before some of the other folks, but yet they beat us to the CPUC. So can you answer that?
Thank you, Councilmember Tisdale. My name is Tyler Masters. I'm Program Manager here at WRCOG. I'd like to explain the CPUC process. So currently, for any jurisdiction to purchase their streetlights back from Southern California Edison, there needs to be an approval of a purchase agreement. And then that purchase agreement is sent to Edison, the package is developed, and it's then sent to the CPUC for execution, for approval, and then physical transition occurs. So as you had mentioned, and also as illustrated on 6D in our little table there, the City of Lake Elsinore did in fact approve at City Council that purchase agreement first in January 2017. What had happened since then, the row over executing the agreement, there was an addendum, an amendment rather, to that purchase and sales agreement that each of the 11 jurisdictions that's moving forward through the purchase agreement was required to sign, take to their councils for additional approval. So each city took that a different path to get that signed and executed. However, that refreshed who was in line when. So at that point, I do not believe that the City of Lake Elsinore was first in approving that amendment. All of our 11 cities have signed and executed that, so we're kind of all back in line. But there was an amendment that was required by Southern California Edison for all cities to continue moving forward, so that did occur. And And what I would like to mention, we have done some additional research given this exercise this last week. We've been working with Jeremy Goldman is here in the audience. We've been working with him and some of the Edison regulatory teams. He has confirmed with me that the City of Lake Elsinore your application will be filed this week, followed by Harupa Community Services District and the remaining 6 jurisdictions that have not entered that process. So Edison is working with our jurisdictions to expeditiously assure that we're moving forward.
Well, thank you. I just want to make sure that we didn't get left out on this. And also, we try to be first in Lake Elsinore. Be quiet, Temecula. We try to be first in Lake Elsinore. And so, okay, the reality rally, that's 6 trophies. Okay, just saying. So, and so anyone else that is going to participate again this year, Lake Elsinore plans to bring it number 7 for the reality rally. Just sorry, that's a side thing. Okay, and so thank you, Ty, for explaining. And Madam, I'd like to move forward with this item.
Okay. Do we have any other questions on item D? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote.
Thank you.
City of Temecula, please vote. Thank you.
Motion passed 21-0. Now we'll go to our reports, and we have our first presentation from the Fair Housing Council, Rose Mays.
My name is Rose Mays, and this is Rebecca. And she will be making a presentation because she is representing Wakeland Housing Development Corporation, who is our partner in this venture.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Louie with Wakeland Housing and Development Corporation. We're a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We're based in San Diego County, but we operate in Inland Empire and pretty much all throughout the state of California. So we're here today to talk about our Mission Heritage Plaza project that we're in partnership with our friends here from Fair Housing Council. A while back, since we've been working on this, affordable housing moves slow, we started talking about a way to revitalize the space. Fair Housing Council now is located in Riverside, right down the street from the historic Mission Inn. They have some offices there. We started looking and saying, what could we do there? We're big on trying to, I know, waiting for my slide to pop up, trying to reuse spaces and use them for things. So we thought, and we decided what was going to work well for us was to do a mixed-use project there. So what we're looking at is doing 72 units of affordable housing. There'll be 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. They'll probably be targeted for families. We're also looking at some special needs populations, setting some units aside for people who've been homeless, possibly veterans, and just getting into, we've been doing a lot more permanent supportive housing at Wakeland for the homeless. We'll probably integrate some of that into this as well. In addition, we're going to be looking at new office space for the Fair Housing Council so that they can have that there. And then really excitingly, a Civil Rights Institute of Inland Southern California.
While you're taking a pause, I just want to remind everyone who is not looking at the presentation, if you hit the camera button, you'll get the presentation. It'll take a few seconds to load up, but you should be able to see the presentation.
So here's our pretty picture. This is the view from Mission Inn Avenue. This would be the view from Fairmont. And this is our still a little bit tentative development schedule because this is affordable housing. We're pulling together our financing. But we really would like to have all of our financing in place by this summer. We just submitted a AHSC, it was also known as the Cap and Trade Program application. So we're hopeful for that. We partnered with Riverside Transit Authority. We're hoping to be one of the first ones. We're hoping to bring one into Inland Empire. And we got the big dream goal of breaking ground in December of 2018 with an opening in March 2020. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rose.
First and foremost, I want to thank you so very much for giving us this opportunity to be a part of this great organization and making this presentation. And also to give you an opportunity not only just to be a part of it, to see if indeed that you have someone in your community that would also like to be a part of that. We have naming opportunity. First and foremost, we have just the building as a whole that you can be a part of. We have the multimedia center, we have the exhibit space, we have pavers, also we have the bricks, legacy bricks opportunity. The bricks itself, that we had so many individuals came to us, they came to us and said, you know what, we don't feel like we are a part of this. So we went back to the drawing board. We said what we would do is, number one, is to make something that would be all-inclusive. We have the bricks at $250, we have the paver at $10,000, and then we have the naming of the Diversity Center along with the exhibit space for $100,000. So I'm quite sure that each and every one can find out eventually where we can fit into that financial category. But we would like so much to record our history and to preserve our history in the inland Southern California. So with that, I know that we had limited amount of time to deal with this with you. If you want to learn more about it, you can call me at Fair Housing at area code 951-682-6581. And with that, I want to thank you again for allowing us to come before you today.
Do we have any questions for Rose or for Rebecca? Seeing none, thank you, ladies, very much.
Sorry, I hit request to speak earlier, and then the mic automatically goes on. I don't know if that's a functional issue or not, but then when I turned the mic off, I had to hit it again. So I'd like to speak on this on behalf of the City of Riverside.
Okay.
Chair, Madam Chair, okay. I just want to let the public know and my colleagues on the dais that the City of Riverside is fully in support of this project and is very, very excited about the Civil Rights Institute being a part of it. Would hope that my colleagues would go to their friends with this information and let them know what we are trying to do to be more diverse, inclusive, committed, and proud here in our county.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey.
Do you have any other comments? Seeing none? I would like to echo Rusty's comments because it is very important for our community. Thank you. Next, we have our PACE programs activities update and program public hearing, revisions to the commercial program lender requirements, and an update on consumer protections. Casey?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, Casey Daly, Director of Energy and Environmental Programs. Just briefly, WRCOG's PACE programs provide financing to finance energy-efficient, renewable energy, water conservation, and seismic improvements. They're repaid on the property tax bill in the form of an assessment. Very briefly, just an update on our PACE program activities. As of January 22nd, we've completed just over 84,000 projects statewide with a value of just under $1.8 billion. That's a lot of money. So our first item today is a public hearing. Back in January, the Executive Committee voted to accept the City of Milpitas and the Town of Truckee into the California HERO Program, and so today's public hearing is to amend our program report to accept them and allow them to operate in the California HERO Program. Okay. The next item is we have a new associate member of the City of Pleasanton has voted to join the California HERO Program on January 18th, and so today's requested action is to pass a resolution to set the public hearing for March 5th, 2018, to add Pleasanton to California HERO Program. Okay, so our next item deals with an update to our SAMAS commercial program. Revolves around the underwriting criteria and lender consent. SAMAS commercial operates both in the WRCOG subregion as well as statewide. And the underwriting criteria currently requires that all projects receive lender consent or acknowledgement before a project can move forward. However, lender consent is not required by all banks. Given the relatively new nature of commercial PACE, some banks are not familiar with consent or how it can be given, and therefore it makes it oftentimes difficult to obtain consent even if a project doesn't have those requirements embedded into the mortgage documents. So as a result, a lot of projects that could otherwise move forward are not moving forward, and so SAMAS approached WRCOG staff back in the fall with a proposal to modify the underwriting criteria to a kind of a revision that would, first of all, require a review of all the commercial documents. So their legal counsel would do a thorough review to see if, within the conditions, covenants, and requirements, to see if consent was actually required for a project to move forward. We would then review, WRCOG legal counsel will then review that that opinion provided from SAMAS' legal counsel to verify that we agree that that the documents do not require consent. If there is no consent requirement, we would then notify the bank, letting them know of an assessment that is about to be placed on the property, and then move forward with the project. What we're proposing is a 6-month pilot to see if this will allow some projects that are currently in the pipeline to move forward. We would have multiple layers of legal review, both from SAMAS legal counsel and WRCOG legal counsel. So the proposal is a 6-month pilot that would go through the underwriting criteria as I suggested. We do have a representative from SAMAS here if there are any questions. We'll get to that momentarily. Our next item deals with our consumer protection policy. So for those that have been following along, we've gone to the Admin and Finance Committee twice with updates, but we are here now to present the final document. Just a background on our consumer protection policy. Back in December of 2015, Executive Committee approved our initial consumer protections. Since then, various pieces of legislation have passed, and in the fall, we began working on updating our consumer protection policies to take into consideration SB 242, AB 1284, as well as PACE Nation's 2.0 consumer protection policies. We met extensively with all of our providers to go through the proposals, to go through the update, to make sure everybody was on board, and we're here today to present the final document. Just want to touch on a couple of the key provisions that are new. First of all, the PACE assessment is now going to be tied to the home improvement contract. So if a property owner who wants to use PACE financing decides that they no longer want to move forward with the home improvement contract, they are not on the hook for their PACE financing, so they're now tied. So the home improvement contract and the PACE contract are tied together. There are also marketing practices that are to be prohibited. Those include referring to the program as a government-backed or government-sponsored program, and also makes it clear that nobody's to say that this is a free program and that you will be required to pay this back on your property tax. The third one, which I think probably is the most important, and it's drawn the most discussion here, so I'd like to spend just a second on it, deals with income-based underwriting, or ability to pay, as we refer to it. And PACE, when we first started the PACE program, everything was based on the property value and the equity within the home. And so the income of an individual was never taken into consideration in determining their eligibility for PACE financing. That followed certainly the spirit and intent of the law, but it also led to potential problems when you have a home that you've got 100% equity in, but you might not be generating the income to pay off that assessment. You could lead yourself into a bad problem. So with ability to pay coming in, that has kind of been switched around so that now, starting on April 1st, the underwriting criteria and your ability to participate in a PACE program is now going to be dependent on your income. Just like any other type of financing that you would normally get, you look at your stated income. So I wanted to just spend a minute on that because I do think it's an important new factor that will also lead to probably fewer people being able to participate, but those that are able to participate are probably more qualified to do so. That concludes my presentation. I would like to make one note before we go into actions. In section 2.2.8, there was an autocorrect issue, and we should have said illiquid assets. It corrected to just say liquid assets, and those two letters are kind of important in the section that it is. So we're asking that should we move forward to adopt the consumer protections, that we move forward with the proposed change that I just verbalized, because that would be very bad. So with that, that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions and conduct a public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Casey. We have first the City of Eastvale. Okay, then we have the City of Corona.
Thank you. On the commercial program, I know there's so many people. On the commercial program, do we know what the interest rate is scheduled to be?
I have a gentleman from Samas here who could probably speak to that more accurately than I could.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark Arbig. I'm a managing director of Samas Capital, which runs the Samas commercial program. Our rate structure is, our new rate structure is for nonprofits, we operate in the 4s. In traditional, we operate in the 5s. And in the non-traditional, we operate in the 6s.
What's traditional and non-traditional?
Non-traditional will be things like golf courses and gas stations and things that require more review, more of an extensive review. Traditional is just anybody that qualifies for the program, other than kind of those anomalies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, then I'll declare the public hearing to be open for the inclusion of the City of Milpitas and the Town of Truckee into the California Hero Program. Janice, are there any persons or person on the phone or in the audience that have questions regarding to the program or the extent of the boundary area proposed to be included within the program?
Do we have any callers online for the California Hero Program? I hear none.
Okay. We do have one request from Dustin Reilich.
Hello, Madam Chair and committee. Dustin Reilich. I'm the Senior Director of Government Affairs for Renovate America, your partner in the HERO program. Boy, it's a lot of movement in order to get all of you in. I just wanted to say that working with staff here at Western Riverside Council of Governments is just a pleasure. And we've worked through all of the different consumer protections, making sure that we have worked through, first of all, the legislature last year, making sure that we had SB 242 and AB 1284 put into place. And then these consumer protections that are now before you have been thoroughly vetted to make sure that they offer up to your constituents the best consumer protections possible, making sure that some of the things that we've been doing for a long time have actually now been implemented across the board for all PACE providers. So we're very happy with all of the relationship that we've had and that we've had with all of your cities, and we thank you for your partnership. And if there's any questions, you can always reach out to obviously Rick or Casey, and find me as well, Dustin Reilich from Renovate America. Thank you so much for your partnership.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment, any additional public comment? Seeing none, then we'll close the public hearing. And does anybody on the executive committee have any additional comments? If none, please vote.
And I'll move that with the verbal change.
Thank you.
City of Eastvale, please vote. District 5, please vote. Thank you, Eastvale.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, motion passed, 22-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll go to item number C, Transportation Uniform Mitigation Fee Program, consideration of recommendations from the Ad hoc Committee. Chris?
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Gray, Director of Transportation. I am here to talk about a process that we underwent starting about a year ago to engage in a comprehensive review of the TUMP program itself. This was concurrent with our Nexus study, and it was intended to really be a top-to-bottom review of the TUMP program. We looked at 4 key topics. They were administration of the program, the zones, fee calculation for service and retail uses, and then also Nexus study projects and criteria. One thing I want to keep in remind everyone is we regularly get questions and comments about the TUMP program. Sometimes it's a simple matter of amending our admin plan, which we can do on a regular basis. Sometimes it's through changes in policy. Sometimes it's through the Nexus study. So there's a variety of means to keep the program fresh. We determined that we hadn't really undertaken a comprehensive review since the program began in the early 2000s, and we felt it was appropriate to review the program. And so we're here today to talk to you about the results of this review and ask for your concurrence on a couple of items. First of all, I want to thank everyone from our ad hoc. We had Rita Rogers, we had Mr. Tisdale, Mr. Ciardo, Krista Ruiz from San Jacinto. We had a number of your city managers, Calamasa, Europa Valley, Wildemar, George Johnson from the county, and Aaron Adams, as well as several public works directors sat in all these meetings. Our first meeting was in April 2017, and we talked about the administration of the TUMP program. We went through the history of the TUMP program, why TUMP was under WCOG's review. We talked about how much money we had, so for example, our total administrative expenditures have come in under $20 million since the beginning of the program. That might sound a lot, but we've collected over about $800 million at this point, so it's about less than 3%. And that includes all of our salary, benefits, overhead, consultant, and legal costs. There was a discussion on whether it would make sense to consider transferring the TUMP program to RCTC. The ad hoc member said it did not. And we also want to note that WCOG's never received a formal request from RCTC to have the TUMP program transferred to them. So our recommendation on this item, number 1, is to maintain the program under WCOG's responsibility. Our second item was the zones. We looked at the zones. As many of you know, we have 5 zones. The smallest is the Pass. The largest is really the Southwest. There was a discussion on whether we should think about restructuring the zones. It was determined that the zone process generally works for the majority of folks, and it was determined by the ad hoc to keep the zones as they are. The third recommendation, and this is one that's actually been acted on already, was to enact a adjustment to the TUMP fee so that there is a 3,000 square foot reduction in the TUMP assessment on retail and service uses. This was actually approved by the ad hoc, brought to the executive committee, and approved back in August. And then the fourth item is determining how to create a little more flexibility in the TUMP program, and that includes adding the types of projects. Right now, TUMP pays for roads, interchanges, and grade separations. There was a discussion if it would be possible, several of our members have asked if it's possible to add active transportation projects, bicycle pedestrian projects, as well as ITS, traffic signal coordination projects, to the future Nexus studies. And so the ad hoc committee recommended that the Public Works Committee study this further and bring back for WCOG's committees specific recommendations on any expansion of the program to include additional project types. Secondly, developing a process to prioritize projects within the zone. And third, developing formal criteria for cities to add projects in future Nexus studies. And so just to give you a little more background, this was brought to the Public Works Committee on December 17th. They approved it. It was brought to the Admin and Finance Committee on January 10th, where it was approved, and it was brought to the Technical Advisory Committee on January 18th for their approval as well. And so our requested actions are to, 1, approve the ad hoc recommendation to maintain the current structure of the TUMP program, 2, approve the recommendation to maintain the zone structure, and then 3, direct the Public Works Committee to have further discussions and bring back a recommendation on project types in TUMF, how to prioritize TUMF projects, and how to add projects within the Nexus study. And Madam Chairman, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, do we have any questions from the Executive Committee?
So precise.
City of Lake Elsinore?
Madam Chair, I just want to say, participating on this work group, I think what we learned was that we have a real good organization. We have a good structure in place. There are some little things that we needed to tweak at the very end that I think will make it a lot smoother, especially for fairness in zones and identifying things. But overall, thank you for allowing me to participate on the committee. And like I said, I think it's a good process.
Good, thanks. Do we have any other comments? Seeing none, we have a couple of public comments. We'll start with Dave Daslich. And I'm sorry if I didn't get your name right.
Not a problem. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Executive Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I would just like to read into the record a letter of comment that the BIA has prepared on this subject. You'll be hearing in more detail from my colleague, Mr. Lormore, in a moment. But the Riverside County chapter of the Building Industry Association is concerned with Item 7C, TUMF Program Consideration of Recommendations from TUMF Ad Hoc Committee. Specifically, our concerns reside with Action Item 3A, expanding the types of projects that can be funded by TUMF, including active transportation projects. The staff report for the Executive Committee's meeting on February 5, 2018 requests approval for TUMF Program Ad Hoc Committee's recommendation that the TUMF network and Nexus studies be expanded to include new types of projects to be funded by TUMF fees, including additional active transportation projects. The staff report fails to define or describe such additional active transportation projects. That the TUMF Nexus studies can be expanded to encompass active transportation, we must object and respectfully point out that any increases in the TUMF collections or any diversion of existing TUMF revenues to such new projects would be unlawful and would unjustifiably shift the costs or portion of the costs of creating new public amenities to the home building community and to new home buyers. It is well established under California law that fees imposed on new development must be strictly limited to costs of mitigating the impacts of developments on existing public facilities and may not be established or imposed on the new development in order to expand or upgrade the existing levels or standards of public facilities. See e.g. Bixel Associates versus City of Los Angeles, 1989, 216 Cal App 3D 1208. In addition, the California Mitigation Fee Act specifies several limitations on fees such as the TUMF. Of particular relevance in this context, Government Code 6601 would prohibit the WRCOG from implementing the ad hoc committee's recommendations and states as follows. A fee shall not include the costs attributable to existing deficiencies in public facilities, but may include the costs attributable to the increased demand for public facilities reasonably related to the development project in order to, 1, refurbish existing facilities to maintain the existing level of service, or 2, achieve an adopted level of service that is consistent with the general plan. Based on the limited information provided to the public by the ad hoc committee relating to the active transportation programs contemplated by this proposal, it does not appear that such programs or facilities could meet either the statutory criteria to be eligible for inclusion in the TUMF program or to be funded in whole or in part by any fees imposed on new development. In addition, Proposition 26, as approved by California's voters in 2010, imposes additional limits on local government fees or other exactions and makes explicit that a government agency seeking to establish or impose any fees or other charges has the burden of demonstrating by a preponderance of evidence that the purported fee is not, in fact, a form of tax requiring 2/3 voter approval. It heightens the government's burden of proof to justify any new fees like TUMF. Based on the current vague descriptions of the proposed additional programs, it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for WRCOG to meet these requirements to justify inclusion of these new programs in the TUMF funding. We are not aware of any substantial evidence nor any legal authority to support the staff's suggestions that fees for the new programs might be justified on the basis of diverting existing vehicular traffic to pedestrian or bicycle transit, citation for San Diego County Water Authority versus Metropolitan Water District, 1124. District's water stewardship funds to fund conservation programs and reduce water usage were not properly characterized as transportation charges and were invalidated. We therefore urge the Executive Committee to reject these proposals for expanding the scope of the TUMF program to include new projects or facilities, or to unjustifiably increase the TUMF fees to fund new amenities unrelated to the needs actually caused by new development. Thank you for your consideration on this matter. The BIA appreciates the working partnership with WRCOG. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Would you give a copy of that to our clerk so she can include that in the records, and then the staff will be able to consider your concerns?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. City of Murrieta? Yeah. Did you want to ask him any questions, or just wait till the second one?
No, I'll wait till the speakers are done.
Okay. Our second speaker is Clinton Lorimore.
Using yours. Hello, good afternoon, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for allowing the extra time for Dave to finish on the letter.
Well, I learned how to use the timer now, so you're
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, understood. I understand why you'd give that to me. No, I wanted to take this opportunity, boil this down. As is stated in the staff report, in the letter that was just written, the staff report does not define what active transportation programs mean, projects mean. As such, what does that mean? In my mind's eye, that means bike lanes. But then the question becomes, do bike lanes actually take trips off the road? And if we are talking about mitigating against with new houses coming in, this is where our concerns come from. As you all know, we have a housing crisis in the state. We are building approximately 80,000 homes a year throughout this state. Collectively, we need to be building 180,000. And the reason for that is a supply problem. And the reason the supply is not there are because of constraints being fees. So where we see this going, and it is not articulated, but where we, in the staff report, where we see this going is down the line, more fees. And that is where we have to ask, when is enough enough? I'm going to actually end up with more time and hopefully entertain some questions. So thank you for your consideration of this.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment section and we'll go back to the committee. City of Murrieta.
Hi. I wanted to clarify, item C3 is just asking that we direct the Public Works Committee to review these things. So I would imagine if all of these things, all these concerns are valid, and they certainly may be, that I know our Public Works people are pretty smart, and we also have energy. Okay. We have an attorney that probably can look at these. That they'll wash this out if indeed these are issues that are concerned. I would say that I still want them to look at that because also the other thing to consider is whether if a city wants bike lanes, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm in favor of it or not yet, but I would imagine somehow that's going to be in a form of, they're not going to pull it out of the sky. And so when houses get built, the city, either the city will do it or the region will do it. So, I think it's another issue. But really, this is just asking them, we're not approving it to be done because there may be issues, just like you had pointed out. But I think it doesn't hurt to have them look at it, so at least we can say, yes, we did explore it, and this is the reason we're not doing it. And then we can move forward. So 3A and B and C are all of that ilk. So I don't think there's anything to be alarmed at yet. And I think in the future we will probably be directed at what's right and what we can or can't do or shouldn't do. And so I appreciate your comments today about this. But I didn't want you to think that we were actually voting to approve anything other than you guys look at it, and if it's doable, maybe we can consider it. If it's not, we won't. So, thank you.
Yeah, I think just to add on to what Kelly is saying, that everything will have to still come back if there are any changes to be made. So you'll get a chance to speak again.
We're just hoping not to have to come back on this subject, but appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you. City of Calamasa?
Yeah, I'd like to I'd like to thank Clint and Dave for coming in here and really pointing that out. That kind of slipped by me. I think of us as an organization that pulls all of our money together to do some big things that we can't do on our own. I haven't seen any bicycle freeways except when they have the Redlands Classic or something like that. But, yeah, we need to watch this. Thank you guys for pointing it out, because there's only so many funds right now. We got so many projects that we want to do. And so I would just say, let's keep our eyes on this stuff, because considering it's one thing, but I can see some real issues.
Okay, thank you. City of Eastvale?
Thank you. That wasn't my phone this time. Appreciate BA coming down. My slight concern is a little bit of mission creep here, and there are so many different funds, especially when you get to the federal level, and it seems like just at the 100,000-foot level, everything seems to want to be tied back to at this active transportation. And, you know, as my colleague from Murrieta said, I'm not necessarily against it. I think, you know, riding bikes are fine. I mean, I ride my bike to the park with my kids, but as a one-to-one replacement and, you know, putting strings attached to funds that are already very scarce, and, you know, we're always fighting for funds amongst ourselves is a concern. So if that were to come up, I don't know if it will, but if it does, that would be my comment. Not necessarily too concerned about it being funded, but I just want to make sure that we don't, you know, pigeonhole ourselves here and try to create too much of this nexus between having to have these active transportation projects on all projects, because they make sense on some projects, they don't make sense on others, and that's okay. Not every freeway project needs to have a bike lane on it. That's just the nature of Southern California. So that's my thoughts for what it's worth.
Okay, thank you. City of San Jacinto? Who pushed her button? Oh.
Thank you for all the insight everyone has provided. And the one thing I would like to provide that may not be being considered in this particular set of worthy explorations is the fact that I was just up in Sacramento a couple of with the League Environmental Committee, and our legislative review that we were given for things that are coming down the pike this year included the housing package from last year and how they're trying to expand upon that housing package to include legislation that includes the every 15-minute bus route, lack of local planning. I don't remember the exact bill number. I'm sorry, I was trying to find it. But there are other pieces of legislation coming down the pike that are going to potentially drastically hurt us in terms of local control. And so when we start exploring things that not only go beyond what I think the widely accepted scope of the TUMF project is, we must be very careful in exploring expanding that scope in other ways where we accidentally give away the local control that we cherish so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Good points. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, we do have a couple of actions that were requested of us. There's 3 of them. If there's no other questions, please vote.
And I'd just like to point out that the water districts do not vote on TUMF matters.
Oh, no water.
City of Banning, please vote.
Give me a second. There.
Western Municipal Water District, would you mind hitting your abstain button, please? Just so we can clear through the votes. Thank you.
Motion passed 18-0 with 3 abstentions. Next, we'll have a report from the League of California Cities. Aaron Sassy.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. It's nice to be with you today. I just wanted to give you a couple updates. Last week, I don't know if any of you saw our news feeds or our CAA report, but the League did release a study on the retirement system. It was a retirement system sustainability study, and this received significant press coverage over the last several days. But basically what this study shows is that over the next 7 years, the general fund dollars cities pay to CalPERS will nearly double. For many cities, as I'm sure all of you know, that these costs will be unsustainable. And one item that I found really interesting was that pension liability impacts to cities will be more significant than that to the state in terms of general fund dollars. So I encourage all of you to read this study. It is on our website, but because of all of the attention, I think it is really just giving cities an opportunity to voice your stories on what the impacts will mean, what services will have to be cut if there's not a solution at least considered moving forward. I know that all of us are really struggling with our pension liability. So please be vocal. I know that everybody's been starting to send comments and attend a lot of the CalPERS hearings, but I want to encourage all of you to just really tell your story when it comes to pensions, because they are listening now. Also, since last time I saw you, the budget was released. There was a couple items in it. The governor really did show a strong commitment to protecting the SB1 funds. Significant talk in his budget about that and his State of the City address. The ACA 5, which is the constitutional amendment to protect the additional SB1 funds for transportation, has been given a number. It's now Proposition 69. In the state budget, there was also some money set aside for for some courthouse projects that will help us here in Riverside County, which is definitely good news because that's something we've been pushing for several years. There's also money for SB 5, which is the park bond, if that is to pass in June. So obviously the budget still has to be passed, but they are allocating some funds. Some money that is also allocated comes from SB 2 from last year. This has to do with the Building Homes and Jobs Act. It's the $75 recordation fee on real estate transactions. This year, in 2018, 50% of these funds are set aside for cities to update their local plans for housing approval. So if you have plans that need to be updated, you can definitely use some of these funds. Moving into 2019 and all the other years, 70% of this funds will go to local-based or it'll go to locals based on federal community development block grants. So it'll be allocated by CDBG funds. But for this first year, you can use it for planning documents. There's money set aside in the budget for some affordable housing under No Place Like Home. It's basically $2 billion to help with housing the mentally ill population. And there is also significant reserves. So this is one part that we're kind of fighting with our hand out along with a lot of other people. But basically, the state has a reserve of $13.5 billion. And so we're asking for some additional funds to be allocated to help with the homelessness issue, with some housing needs. But like I said, a lot of people have their hands out, and there is only so much money to go around. A couple legislative items that I did want to bring to your attention. The legislative deadline is coming up on February 16th, so we still have some time for bills to be introduced. But a couple items. One is SB 827. This is one that we're definitely concerned about. It's by Senator Wiener, and it has to do with your planning and zoning. Basically what this does, it will take your local control and give it to developers and transit agencies when it comes to planning around major transit stops or high-quality transit corridors. So you definitely want to look at this, get your letters in. We've already submitted an opposition letter, but definitely not something we want to move forward. Another bill that you should be paying attention to is SB 623 by Monning. This has to do with water quality. And the governor has a trailer bill that's very similar, but among other things, this bill would establish a first-of-its-kind state fee on public water system customers to really help with quality water, help with water quality and especially in the low-income areas, but it would do a fee for everybody else that's not considered low income. So you want to pay attention to that. We are also officially opposed, so we should have a sample letter for you. With that, I'd like to be happy to take any questions, but thank you for having me. I know there'll be a lot more in the coming weeks, so bear with me. Oh, our next meeting, March 12th, Canyon Lake is hosting us, so you should all RSVP for that.
Okay, well, don't go anywhere because you do have at least one question. City of Eastvale?
Thank you, thank you, Aaron, for your update. I was just curious when you're going to publish your memo on death by taxes.
Haha.
City of Norco?
I'm going to put you on the spot, Aaron. I'm really sorry. As you know, the city of Norco is in the throes of districting. We thought we would be immune because we were so small. And it's interesting, I hear the murmurs. Everybody knows it's corrupt, and I just don't know why the League of Cities and why WRCOG has not intervened in this, or at least listened to the cities. We talk about local control, and yet there's nothing, I can't think of anything that destroys local control more than having to cut your city up, especially a city like ours, which is very small. Now, maybe Riverside, they're large. They've been doing that for years. But Norco, we're dependent on at-large voting to sustain a lifestyle. I mean, we had a black mayor. Nobody around us had a black mayor. We have a black city manager. The first superintendent of schools, Hispanic, was born in Norco and served in Norco. We hired the first Hispanic city manager in the history of the state of California. When everybody around us had segregated schools, we didn't. And I don't understand why at least our region isn't tackling this even now, because it is illegal per federal law. Same with WRCOG. I don't understand why we haven't made a stand. Just like I don't understand why the attorneys aren't making a stand, because they know what the guy's doing is extortion.
I guess my response would be that it hasn't been that we haven't done anything. We've been really successful legislatively to at least get you additional tools.
Right.
The difficulty is really the lawsuit side. So far, the lawsuits that have moved forward haven't been successful. There is a process with the league that if you do want assistance, there's a process you can apply. You know, the committee decides what we get involved with and not, but I mean, that's a really difficult battle. So we've really focused our efforts on what we can do to at least
And I understand. I preface this by saying I'm putting you on the spot, but it just seems to me that all these things pale in comparison to what these different cities are going through. I totally get the Speaker of the House runs the whole process. I totally get the reason our elected officials aren't getting involved, because then they don't. I totally get the whole situation. But if we're going to keep the individual natures of each of our cities, we better wake up, because we better wake up. And it is the number one issue facing us, because we're very different than Hemet. We're very different than Riverside. We're very different from Urupa Valley. We're very different from Eastvale. And the truth of the matter is we're being told, one, that we're racist, and two, that we don't have a right to have the kind of elections we want to have. Do you realize people in each of our cities may not vote for 4 years? So anyway, I just thought I would put that out there. Thank you.
Kevin, I just want to respond a little bit to you in the sense that I live in a small city, 30,000 people. The reason we did it was because of dollars. What we were told it would cost us to fight it was more than we could really pay on an ongoing basis through our general fund.
And I completely understand that the way it's rigged is that if you lose, you pay triple damages. Mm-hmm. I also understand that not one single city attorney who knows that the man is actually rigging his bills is stepping in. That's illegal. And I also understand that you've got to pay the guy. I totally get the whole situation. But at some point, we should be banding together, trying to do something collectively as cities. I also know in Northern California, a lot of people really like the fact this is happening, except now it's happening in democratically held cities, and they're upset. It's also not working, because as the cities are being divvied up, they're turning conservative. So it doesn't even work the way they want it to work. I mean, we really do understand the situation, and I totally get small cities. We're the same way. We have a reserve of, what, $12 million? It's just wrong. I'm not even saying we should do something about it. Norco's going to do something about it. I mean, the guy lives in Malibu. Guess who's going to districts? And I just think if we don't speak up, we are Mr. Shankman. We are the corruption of the system. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have anyone else that wanted to speak on the item? If not, we'll refer it over to the Admin and Finance Committee to see what we can do to bring back to the Executive Board. Any other questions on any other things that Aaron brought up? Saying none, thank you. And just remember that our next week meeting then is March the 12th in Canyon Lake.
Canyon Lake. Thank you.
Thank you. We have report from our committee representatives. Anyone from SCAG? Bonnie?
I'd like to report on the EEC, and we had some lively discussions about a number of the bills that were signed into law, such as AB 617, which is a significant toxic air quality legislation that hasn't been really dealt with in the past 3 decades. So it's known as the Community Air Pollution Program, and it's a companion bill to AB 398 that extends the California Cap and Trade Program and GHG emissions. And it provides new tools to address pollution and exposure in California. And AB 617 requires the ARB to identify communities with highest exposures, and the key components of that are monitoring community emissions reduction plans, best retrofit control technology, and emissions reporting. Timing on that is basically 2018. In addition, one of the largest updates to CEQA guidelines since 1990s, with efficiencies improvements, substantive improvements, and technical improvements. And SB 743, implementation guidelines, transportation impact analysis, and the guiding principles of SB 743 encourages infill developing. And they talked a lot about, of course, the VMT, and there was a lively discussion about that and the implementation of that ruling, indicating that urban sprawl changes are not healthy, and the longer VMT encourages, obviously the longer the commute, the more it affects the VMT. And they're encouraging, of course, walkable communities. But that discussion won't end. We probably will be discussing it again next month. So with that, that's my report.
Did we have any other reports from SCAG? I do want to report from the Community Education Housing Department. We talked about 2 basic issues. One was cannabis. We had an interesting presentation from Weed Maps. They do have a portfolio that they put out about information about what their thoughts are. But my takeaway was they said, if you're going to do it, look at the cost. A lot of cities will figure out a fee per square foot or whatever they're going to do, but a lot of cities that have done that have found out that the cost on the city, by the time they go through all the processes, they're really not doing that well. So they talked about examining the cost long-term, not just short-term, and to consider, too, whether or not you are able to just introduce a fee without it having to go to the voters, because as of January now, if you're going to do a fee, it has to go to the voters. The other presentation we had was from Dr. Lucy Jones' office for emergency preparedness for earthquakes. There is a program, and I don't think any of the cities that are here other than Riverside and Hemet are participating in it, but they are looking at building structure requirements, and it is something that we all should be looking at if we aren't already. Next we'll have SCAQMD. Ben?
Thank you. Just want to bring to everyone's attention an item coming up at our next AQMD meeting is Rule 1111, and that rule directly relates to reduction of NOx emissions from natural gas-fired fan-type central furnaces, so your air conditioner furnace in your house. I can tell you that staff has worked long and hard with the manufacturers that are out there to come up with what reductions could be done, the rules based on that. There are reductions that are coming forward across the nation on the federal rule. We're just getting out ahead of a little bit, of course. It can be, as you usually do. But I can tell you that we've directed them to continue to work, even this month, with some of the manufacturers that still aren't quite happy. Other manufacturers are coming in saying, you should have enacted this a long time ago. I've already got the product. I'm ready to go. So it's a bit of a chicken before the egg for some manufacturers, but most of them should have their units available by the 2019 deadline. And between now and 2019, we'll start a mitigation fee for the units that are out there that are still more polluting. You can pay the mitigation fee, put that in, and then if you get a lesser one, lesser polluting one, you get a little bit of a discount. So anyhow, just want to let everybody know that's coming forward next month on March 2nd.
Thank you. Do we have anything for CalCog, Brian?
No, our next meeting is in March.
I'll ask you then, too. Okay, Rick, anything from the executive
Yeah,
director?
yeah, thank you. Just one thing. Our Director of Transportation, Chris Gray, has secured a reservation for up to 40 people to attend the Contra Costa Transportation Authority's Gomentum site. That's the site where they're doing their autonomous vehicle testing. So we have the opportunity to take 40 of our elected officials, city managers, public works directors, planning directors, staff from RTA, staff from RCTC, certainly welcome to attend this and see the latest on what is really happening with autonomous vehicles. And hopefully it will sort of help kind of kickstart what local jurisdictions can do in anticipation of autonomous vehicles. So right now we're looking at finalizing a date sometime during we think the week of April the 9th. We're not quite sure which day, but details to come, and we'll provide that information to you and really hope that we can essentially fill all of our 40 slots for a Western Riverside day up there. I think it would be very, very helpful to us all.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have any items for future agendas? I would like to ask if we can get a point-in-time count for the county, now that they've done that, if we're able to get some information. Blake Elsinore?
I'm sorry, I was a little quick on the button. I want to speak for general comments.
Okay.
Sorry.
Are there any general comments?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there are.
Blake Elsinore.
Thank you. Since I was sort of called out about Reality Rally, I do want to comment a little bit, just quickly about it. Temecula hosts this, and thank you, Temecula. It's a great venue. It's a great time. I think it's going to be April 14th this year. We started the City Challenges about 7 years ago, and yeah, it's been a while. And there were, I think, 3 cities that participated that year, Temecula, I think in Murrieta that one year, and then the next year, Lake Elsinore participated and has taken it ever since. But just saying, just sort of saying. But it's for a good cause. It's support Michelle's Place, and you get a weekend of reality stars. It's a fun time in Temecula and also down in the wine country. So, City Council members, please join us. It's fun. Lake Elsinore is going to win it again, but I'm still inviting you to come out. To watch us win.
What day is it, and who do they contact if they want any more information?
You can just go on Reality Rally or Michelle's Place, or Mary Ann would probably be the best person to talk to and find details since Temecula hosts it. And they can still sign up for teams to raise money if you want to raise money, but pretty much, for the council, it just gives more recognition of Michelle's Place in breast cancer. And for the city of Norco, I understand what you're saying about your issues. I do want to point out that in 1966, Lake Elsinore had the first African-American mayor.
Oh, my gosh.
And also, we had the first African-American mayor in the city of Murrieta and Temecula sitting here, and the first African-American mayor of Banning. I didn't make that cut to be first,
but I can check Norco off my list of cities I want to be mayor of now. It's already been done.
Well, we had the first Hispanic city manager in 1967.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, thank you for indulging me.
Thank you. City of Norco, you can give your 1-minute rebuttal.
No, I don't want to give her. I don't want to give her a rebuttal. No, I think that's great. And in our district, though, Riverside, Corona, Eastville, Europa Valley, we were the first. What can I tell you? First off, I want to thank the WRCOG team for talking about alternatives to energy. They came out twice. They were fantastic. I voted against it because I wanted to talk about it. I didn't want to receive and file it because I think it's a very exciting program. But I really appreciate you guys coming out and giving your pitch twice, 2 days in a row. Did an excellent job. And actually, there's a little bit of buzz about it. People are curious if they'll save money. And secondly, a little bit of fun. As you know, the city of Norco is very patriotic, and we are home to the former U.S. Naval Base, Naval Hospital, and also the home of the first weapons assessment laboratory in the history of missile technology. For 10 years, Navy historians, not the Navy, have said this really wasn't significant, and actually a lot of the stuff that happened there didn't happen. We went to Sacramento on Friday and met with the State Historic Preservation Commission, and they nominated 5-0 to nominate the old Naval Hospital and the Fleet Missile System Analysis and Evaluation Group to the National Register of Historic Places. Navy's still fighting this. Sadly, it doesn't really affect them. I don't think they quite understand, but we are going to move forward, push forward. California Department of Corrections also finally gave up. They said, yeah, it's historic, So we'll put programmatic agreements in place, which will actually help them to do the stuff they need to do on the site and shouldn't interfere with anything that they're doing. But City of Norco, we're very proud of the Navy in Norco. We love the base. I personally fought on 3 BRAC fights. My parents fought on, closures in 69, 64, and we're very, very excited. We're hoping that the Navy will sign off on this so it can go forward to the keeper of the register. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Western Municipal Water District, Brenda?
Thank you. So, some of you may know, it's Girl Scout cookie season. So here's my comment for you. Support your local Girl Scouts. Be proud of our girls. There are over 10,000 of those girls and troops locally here in Riverside and San Bernardino counties. And our council here has been one of the top selling councils in the nation. So please support your local Girl Scouts. Thank you.
Thank you. City of Temecula?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That was just a shameless plug for cookies, and I want 2 boxes of Thin Mints, please. So, as I get every year. I will say thank you to Brian for bringing the Reality Rally to everyone's attention, and it is May the 4th and 5th, that weekend. And so, I look forward to once again hosting the City of Lake Elsinore and Brian's rippling abs at the Reality Rally. So,
okay, thank you. Do we have any other general announcements? Seeing none, then we'll refer to our attorney for a closed session.
Yes, we do have one closed session item. We're going to ask the board members come down to the audience, and we'll handle that. And anybody in the audience who's not a board member, please leave the room.
Madam Chair, I'm going to recuse myself from that meeting because we're kind of in that.
Okay, thank you.